rather be able to hear you.
Well, hearing me is important. That's,
I
at
wanna
least
hear you.
possibly.
Usually I can't come anymore at night
I understand that.
because I can't see where I'm going.
No, I also understand. Going to Noyak, too, at nighttime, I mean, it's scary stuff.
It is, because that road is so narrow and there's so much traffic on it. It's
And animals,
crazy.
It's, I was talking to Lou about that actually once when we were driving on that road, because when my family had their house in Bridgehampton, we didn't really come this way all that often. But I was thinking, like that road was never intended to be a throughway, which is 100% what it's become, right? And, like just Cromer's alone, they did that reworking of it, thank God, because otherwise it seemed to me like every single day that was likely to be an accident.
I agree.
So it's one of these sort of funny things. Good Shabbos, by the way, for, oh, the Rav, David's.
Did you find a place to park?
Was it a special day or something?
Got here early.
Yeah, no, it seemed like that, it's like it's so guys, just so you know, I'm getting over something, but I don't think I'm contagious at all, and it's definitely not COVID. I'm tested negative for that, but the whole family got sick this week, so hence the sitting down piece of it, and also, like, if you want to turn around and return, I will judge no one, and if you'd rather me dive with the mask on, I also am fine with that. But, no, this is not something anybody should have or want.
I had something like that for 3 weeks.
Oh God, I hope it's not 3 weeks. But it's been one of these things where, like, it started at his stomach. So I thought, oh, okay, that stinks, but it'll get better in like a day or two. The kids, all that. But that just seemed to be round one, and so now it's just every day seems to be something new and different.
That's what the problem is.
Right.
Your babies.
Oh.
They carry these giant germs.
Oh yeah. Well, the other thing was we were in the city, so you bring the country kid to the city, and you start putting them around in the playground, and the next thing you know, it's but this literally happened the last time we were in the city like this, which would have been pre-COVID. The exact same thing happened.
That's what happened. We got back.
Were you on the playground also?
It's
like it's like a remarkable thing. It's either that or maybe I was the vector. I went to the World Jewish Congress dinner with Neil, so we can all blame it on Neil maybe. But no, I think kids are remarkable that way. They just pick something up and pass it on. But
They do, and then they just sort of pass it on and go.
yeah, and I think it gets worse with each pass. Is sort of how it goes. But yeah. So anyway, I appreciate your collective understanding, and
I'm going to ask you something
Sure.
about these prayers that you're going to record for Hanukkah.
yeah, sure.
With me.
Yeah.
This with you. So
You don't have to
how
leave.
do this?
You don't have to leave that. I'm going to send an email this week, and we're just going to set up some
Oh, good.
time, and it'll just be around everybody's convenience. And all we do is basically you're home, and you set up your Chanukiah wherever you feel comfortable, and we'll kibitz a little bit,
Oh, okay.
and then you'll light the candles, and I'll sing the prayers, and we'll talk, and then that will get basically for everybody else.
Okay.
But I'll explain the magic behind it,
It's just
this
that
week.
I have to clean it.
That's probably a good point for me too. I think I probably have to do the same.
Yeah.
I've never been actually. Janet Grossman is our resident expert polisher of silver. I learned that this is. It's she has to teach me. My dad also. My dad is like obsessive about polishing silver. It's really very funny. I guess I must have missed that particular piece of things. So, how's everybody doing? Good Shabbos. It's good to see everybody.
Exactly, but
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh no, this is already actually one of the largest numbers we've had to begin a service in a long time. This is a surprising number of people last night, actually.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. No, Howard was here. I mean, Howard, how many people do you think that was
How was fun?
last night? How many people do you think were here?
24.
Yeah, which was nice. And then there's another usually like 25 or 30 people watching online and stuff. So anyway, so I'm going to do my very best to keep as close to our normal as possible. But I'm pulling sort of half breath at the moment, so hence the sitting. But we might just, rather than doing our opening song, I think we might just dive right in. Sound good? Sound good? Okay. sort of nice sitting down, actually. It's a little less crazy. But obviously for the places where we'll stand, I'll indicate. So let's get started. Obviously hard when you're not feeling so good, but starting with gratitude is a very important part of the day and very important part of Shabbat. So we'll open our Sidurim to page 186, and we'll begin our service. And thanks. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam. Modeh ani lefanecha Modehani lefanecha melech chai v'kayam shechazarta bi nishmati bechemla rabba emunatecha. Turn now to page 192, Matovu. Matovu alecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Israel. Ma tohu alecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Israel. We'll turn now to page 194. And we'll read the blessing for our bodies together in Hebrew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et hadam bechokma, uvaravo nekavim nekavim, chalulim chalulim. Galui v'yadua lifnei chisech abodecha, she'im yipatech echad mehem, o yisatem echad mehem, I efshar lehitkayem v'la'amod lefanecha. Baruch atah Adonai, rofech chol basar, mafli la'asot. Let's prayer for our souls, page 196. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahim. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahim. Elohai neshama shenatata bi Tehora, tehorahim. Elohai neshama shenatata bi tehorahim. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God and God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Praised are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai, asher bi'ado nefesh kol chai, veruach kol b'sar ish. Turn now to page 198, and we'll rise in body or spirit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lasach v'ivina lafchid meyom uven laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, pokeach ivrim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, matir asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokar etzal hamayim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamechin mitzadei kaver. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, malbish arumim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, anoten la'av koach. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamavir shena meinai, notunu mahame afapai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani b'tzelem Elohim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani ben chorin. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, she'asani Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Adas Israel b'gvura. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Adas Israel b'tifara. You can all be seated. Turn now to page 204, and we'll begin by reading together in Hebrew at the very top of the page, and then the English at the bottom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. O Adonai our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamelamed Torah le'amo Yisrael. We're now on page 206. Elu devarim she'ein lahem shiur, she'adam ochel perotehem ba'olam hazeh, v'akeren kayemet lo le'olam haba, ve'elu hen Kibud Avayim Ugmilut Chasadim Ve'ashkamahat Beit HaMidrash Shacharit Ve'aravit Ve'achnasat Orchim Uvikur Cholim Ve'achnasat Kala Levayat HaMet V'yun Tefila Ve'avat Shalom Ben Adam L'Chaveru Ve'talmud Torah Keneged Kulam. Boy, I'm now starting to see on the other side of the equation, telling people to stand up and sit down. It's much easier to just stay standing. All this up and down is actually much more exhausting. But on that note, we'll rise in body or spirit for the opening blessing of Bezukah de Zimra on page 212. Baruch shehamar v'haya haolam baruch hu, baruch oseh v'reshit, baruch omer v'yoseh, Baruch gozer umekayem, Baruch merachem al haaretz, Baruch merachem al habriot, Baruch meshalem sachar tov livrehav, Baruch halad v'kayam lanetzach, Baruch pohodeh umatzil, Baruch shemo, b'shvachot uv'zmirot negadelcha, u'nshabecha nefercha v'nazkir shimcha v'namlicha malkeinu Eloheinu, Yachid Chei HaOlamim, Melech Meshubach Mufo Adayat Shemo HaGadol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Melech Mehulal Batishpachot. Okay, everybody will be seated. We're now on page 214, and we're the second line down in Hebrew. Tov lehodol Adonai, Tov lehodol Adonai, ולזמר לשמך עליון, טוב להודות לאדוני, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, ואמונתך בלילות, ואמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני. עלי אסור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בכינור, כי שימחתני אדוני בפועלך, ומעשה ידך רענן. מגדו מעשיך ים, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מגדו מעשיך ים, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. מגדו מעשיך ים, מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך. Good Shabbos morning. Good to see you. Shabbat shalom. We're on page 250. Ashrei Yoshvei Veitecha Od Yadelucha עוד יהללוך, אשרי יושבי ביתך, עוד יהללוך, עוד יהללוך, סלע שם שלום. Continue silently. ואנחנו נברך יה מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם, הללויה, 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 hallelujah, hallelujah. We're now on page 218, Psalm 150. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, El Bekocho, Hallelujah, Berkiauzo, Hallelujah, Vigvurotav, Hallelujah, Kerov Kulo, Hallelujah, 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 Hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 beteka hashofar, hallelujah, benebel bechinor, hallelujah, betofu machol, hallelujah, beminim vehuga, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, 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 Betzilot Shama, hallelujah, Betzilot Trua, Kol Anshama Tehallelujah, hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Nishmat kol achai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Continue silently. V'rach masad. We're now on page 220. Ilufinu aleshira kayam ulshonenu rina kamon galab vesiftotenu shevach kemacheve rakia beinenu meirot kashemesh vechayareach Beyadenu fursot kenishrei shamayim Veraglenu kalot kahayalot Ein anachnu maspikim lehodot lecha Adonai Eloheinu Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu. We continue silently. We're now on page 222, the middle paragraph in Hebrew. Shochenad ma'arhom mekadosh shemhom v'chaturanenu tzadikim b'Adonai la yesharim na'ava tehillah befi yesharim tihalalu divrei tzadikim titbarachu b'lshon chasidim titromamu v'kerev kedoshim titkadashu ma'kehalot ribevotam chabeim Yisrael perinaha nitpa'ar Shimcha malkeinu bechol dor v'ador ya bye 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 ya bye bye ya bye 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 ya bye bye ya bye bye ya bye 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 ya bye bye ya bye bye ya bye bye. We'll now rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 223 for the concluding blessing of Bazooka to Zimra, and remain standing through the Chatzi Kaddish and the Baruch Hu on the next couple pages. Yishtabach Shemacha Lahad Malkeinu Ahel HaMelech HaGadol VeHaKadosh B'Shamayim uVa'aretz Ki Lecha Na'eh Adonai Eloheinu V'Elohei Avoteinu V'Imotenu Shir Shvacha V'Zimra V'Zumemshala Netzach Gedula Ugvura Teila V'Tiferet Kedusha U'Malchut Brachot V'Hodaot Me'ata B'Ad Olam Baruch Atah Adonai El Melech Gadol Batishpachot El HaHodaot Adonai Niflaot Habocher B'Shirei Zimra Melech El Chei HaOlam Yitkadal Yitkadash Shemei Rabbah Be'alma Divrachirtei Be'amlich Machutei V'chayechon V'yamechon V'chayei D'chol Beit Yisrael Ba'agalahu B'zman Karim V'meru Amen Yesh Me'Rabbah Mevarach Le'alam Le'amei Almayah Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yitvar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yaleh V'yitalal Shemei D'kudsha Leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechamata damiran be'alma v'imeru Amen. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach. Baruch Adonai hamevorach le'olam v'amen. Can you please be seated? We're now on page 228, and we'll read together in English beginning at the bottom of the page and do Or Chadash in the 3 lines in Hebrew just above. Praised are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of light and darkness, who makes peace and fashions all things. In mercy you illumine the world and those who live upon it. In your goodness you daily renew creation. How numerous are your works, Adonai, in wisdom you formed them all, filling the earth with your creatures. We praised Adonai, our God, for the excellent work of your hands, and for the lights you created, may they glorify you. Shine a new light upon Zion, that we all may swiftly merit its radiance. Praised are you, Adonai, creator of all heavenly lights. Or Chadash, Al Tzion Ta'ir. Or Chadash, Al Tzion Ta'ir. V'nizkech kulanu me'era le'oro. V'nizkech kulanu me'era le'oro. Yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai bim bam, yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai. Yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai bim bam, yadadai bim bim bam, yadadai. Baruch Atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot. We'll turn now to page 230. We'll read together in English at the top of the page and in Hebrew at the bottom. How deeply you have loved us, Adonai our God, gracing us with surpassing compassion. On account of our forebears whose trust led you to teach them the laws of life, be gracious to us, teaching us as well. O merciful one, have mercy on us by making us able to understand and discern, to heed, learn, and teach, and lovingly to observe, perform, and fulfill all that is in your Torah. Ve'ha'erinenu b'toratecha ve'dabek libeinu b'mitzvotecha ve'yached levaveinu le'ahava u'lira et shemecha ve'lo nevosh ve'lo nikalem ve'lo nikashem le'olam va'ed ki b'shem kodshecha hagadol v'hador habatachnu nagila v'nismecha b'yeshuatecha v'havyeinu l'shalom me'arba kanfot haaretz ve'tolicheinu kol memiut le'artzeinu ki el poel yeshuot ata uvanu v'chata ve'kerabtanu l'shimcha hagadol selah be'emet le'odot lecha yechidcha b'yahava baruch ata Adonai habocher b'amo Yisrael me'ahava Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. We're now on page 234. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha ve'shinatam levanecha v'dibarta bam ve'shivtecha b'veitecha u'lechtecha v'derech u'shochbecha u'vkumecha u'kshartam leot ayadecha ve'hayu letotafot b'ninecha u'chtavtam namezezot beitecha u'visharecha. Page 236. Vayomer Adonai al Moshe lemor daber b'nei Yisrael v'amarta alehem v'asu lahem tzitzit al kanfei v'ydehem ledorotam lenatnu al tzitzit hakanav b'til tchelet v'haya lachem letzitzit uritem oto uschartem et kol mitzvot Adonai nasitem otam Lo taturu acharei levavchem acharei enechem asher atem zonim achareihem leman tizkeru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim l'Elohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher tzei'ti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai Elohechem Adonai Elohechem. Amen. Okay, we're on page 238, the very bottom, 4 lines in Hebrew, sort of towards the bottom third of the page. Tehilot le'elyon baruch hu mevorach Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shir ha besimcha rabba ve'amru chulam Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai Mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh nor ha'teilot osef elem ay la 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 shira chadasha shibchu geulim leshimcha al svat hayam Yachad kulam hodu והמליכו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל ופדחנו מכה יהודה וישראל גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו קדוש ישראל ברוך אתה אדוני God Yisrael. You remain standing for the Amidah, which we will begin together on page 242, and then continue silently. Please go at your own pace, and when you're finished, you may be seated. Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Those that are still having their silent Amidah, please continue at pace. You can always catch up. Those that are finished will again rise in body or spirit as we turn to page 324 for the repetition of the Amidah.
324.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah האל הגדול הגיבור והנורא אל עליון גומל חסדים טובים הקונה הכל וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם למען שמו באהבה מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם בעזרת שרה אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני מחיה מתים אתה רב להושיע משיב הרוח ומרעיד הגשם מחכה חיי חסד וחיי מתים ברחמים רבים סומך נופלים ורופא חולים ומתיר אסורים ומקיים אמונתו משנה יפה מי כמוך בגבורות ומי דומה לך מלך ממית ומחיה ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. We're on page 326. מקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמרו, הכתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש קדוש קדוש, אדוני צבאות, אלוהי כל הארץ, כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מה אדיר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חיים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון לדור ודור. הללויה, לדור ודור, לדור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, לדור ודור, דור ודור, לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש, לעולם לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Okay, everyone can be seated. At the top of page 329. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. מקדשי שבי שבת, כולם ישמעו ויתענגו מטובך שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. והשביעי רצית בו וקידשתו שבת. עמדת ימים אותו קראת שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. זכר למעשה בראשית שבת. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי 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 שבת וקורא עונג שבת. אלוהינו אלוהי אבותינו ואמותינו רצה במנוחתנו. קדשנו במצוותיך ותן חלקנו בתורתך. צבנו מטובך ושמחנו ישועתך. טהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת והנחילנו. אדוני אלוהינו עין 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 ינה נה 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 ינה לה 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 ילה לה 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 ינה לה 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 ינה לה 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 ילה לה 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 ילה לה לה לה. באהבה רצון שבת קודשך בנוחובה ישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני Mekadesh HaShabbat. Right, turn now to page 330 and we'll read together in English in the middle of the page. On this Shabbat day, as you graciously receive our prayers, help us to hear your call. Grant us enough health to fulfill our duties and the compassion we need to attend to others. Teach us humility that we may perceive our own faults and grant us the wisdom to be forgiving of others. Give us the courage to be true to our highest selves and the charity to see the best in those around us. Give us patience enough not to become discouraged, hope enough to overcome all fears for the future, and faith enough to know your presence. O source of blessing, look with favor upon us. May our offerings be acceptable to you. Baruch atah Adonai she'odcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. We'll turn now to page 332 and we'll read together, beginning in English at the bottom of the page and on to the next. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations, modim anachnu lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, modim anachnu lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fair world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, modim anachnu lach. For human liberties and sacred rights, for opportunities to change and grow, to affirm and choose, modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulachanah lehodo. Sim Shalom, page 334. Sim Shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael ha'amecha, orcheinu yotzreinu kulanu kechad, ve'or panecha, hi ve'or panecha natata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim Shalom, tova uvracha, chen v'chesed berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael ha'amecha, Torat chaim be'ahavat chesed, u'tzedaka uvracha ve'rachamim nechaim neshalom. Sim Shalom, tova uvracha, en v'chesed berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael ha'amecha, etov beinecha levarech, et amcha Yisrael, v'chol et u'v'chol shah, Ishlomecha. Sim Shalom, tova uvracha, en v'chesed rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael ha'amecha. Baruch atah Adonai, v'rechet amo Yisrael b'shalom. Let's read together on the bottom of page 336 in English. I need strength, humility, courage, patience, strength to control my passions, humility to assess my own worth, courage to rise above defeats, patience to cleanse myself of imperfections, and wisdom to learn and live by our sacred teachings. Let me not be discouraged by my failings. Let me take heart from all that is good and noble in my character. Keep me from falling victim to cynicism. Teach me sincerity and enthusiasm. Endow me with perception and courage, that I may serve others with compassion and love. Oseh shalom imromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Shabbos, everybody. How we doing? We're doing all right. You know, it's funny. You don't realize the parts of yourself that you need to sing, and that some parts I can hit just fine, but all the high notes, that's the tricky part. Somebody once tried to explain to me.
You have a good quiet.
Well, you guys are singing nicely this morning. I can hear it. It's good. It's good. Feels
You
good.
guys are good.
You know, this is like my yeshiva moment right here, right? I grew the beard out. I'm sitting at a table in front of everybody. You know, it's really very, very funny, but I'm starting to get more comfortable with it as it goes. So, yeah, well, I know that mechitza, you know what a mechitza is, Ellen?
Do I what?
Do you know what a mechitza is?
No.
So it's in a traditional Orthodox synagogue where the separation of men and women, there's the thing that goes down. So as it just happens, for whatever reason, you know, we do get a nice mixture of gender here, but somehow or another it tends to be, right? Well, this is a test. We're going to wait and see.
I was just looking and seeing, I'm the only one on this side.
Well, not for long, right? Because Marcia is here. So the question is, right? You know, Marcia's going to pick this side, but Marcia usually goes to this side. But it's not an intentional thing by any means, you know. Right, but nonetheless, hey Marcia, how you doing? Good.
How are you doing?
Not great, but still good enough to study Torah. At least I hope.
Are we up to Torah?
What's that?
Are we up to Torah?
We're up to the drash before the Torah service. At least I hope it will be something resembling a drash, but we'll see how we go from there. So we're going to read it a little bit from the beginning of Parshat Vayishlach, and let me make sure with the Rav. It's been a couple of weeks. I am on the right parsha, right? Okay, good. Whew. It's always a concern. So if you have the Women's Torah Commentary, it'll begin on page 185. If you have the Plowed Chumash, it's on page 219. And if you're following in some other form online, you're looking for Genesis chapter 32, beginning with verse 4. So, I'm coming in here actually a couple weeks being away, mid-conversation, mid-story, right? And this very famous story of Jacob and Esau, Jacob and his wives, Jacob eventually and his many children. And, the focus of the beginning of the Parsha is on the coming back together of Jacob and Esau, of these two brothers who parted ways in, let's just say, not the best fashion when they were children, largely due to the fact that Esau was meant to get the birthright, and Jacob, through the help of his mother and various things, ultimately receives the birthright instead. And so they've now been living apart for many, many years. And I know that I have taught at least the beginning of this idea before, but there is this is one of those great opportunities in Torah study where the decision, whether there's a decision or whether it's just simply one's natural bias to stick either very closely to what we say in Hebrew, pshat part of the text, the very simple, very plain meaning, the one that doesn't require any outside explanation or source, that doesn't take into account midrash or anything of the sort, versus those that expand upon it and look for even the slightest variations or slightest things to catch the eye to suggest that perhaps what the story is saying is maybe saying something different. So we get a very famous interaction here. Jacob, and again, this is one of those times where I think although David, you were in the military, right? I think, is any other military people in the room, ever been in, the concept of what it means to be standing and looking out, for example, when we're told that Esau is coming towards Jacob and Jacob's people with 400 men in tow, 400 soldiers, and what that conceivably actually means, right? What does that actually feel like to a person, right? We can judge Jacob, and one of the easiest ways that he is generally judged in this parsha in particular is the decision to put let's say the most vulnerable, the least protected, at the front of the column, as opposed to at the back of the column. And he sends them kind of on their way towards Esau and towards Esau's camp and towards Esau's soldiers. And we don't know what his rationale is necessarily within his own mind, but the text suggests that he really is trying to, first of all, divide his camp. So if the soldiers should attack, they won't be able to get everybody. They'll only get 1/3 of, or presumably so. And this idea of trying to appease his brother by sending gifts and sending people ahead of him, these can be viewed as strategic or tactical moves. These can be viewed as cowardly moves. These can be viewed as calculating moves. It really depends, again, on how one views and understands Jacob the character. And all of this, again, since I'm coming in, a couple weeks behind in the discussion, I'm not sure what's been coming up for you guys since I've been gone. But again, it's something of a Rorschach test for the reader in terms of how we see, right, what it is that we see on the page. Oftentimes will be much more reflective of us, right? Were we in Jacob's situation? Were we in Esau's situation? Right? What would we do? How would we handle this much more complicated circumstance? Now, I would venture a guess that everybody in this room has had at least one relationship in their life that became strained to the point in which there was a break, right? In which a person is cut off or a relationship is cut off. And the question then becomes, right, we're not the people walking around with soldiers, but we do inevitably find ourselves in these places in which there is either a desire for or an attempt for reconciliation, or at the very least a meeting back together again. And we see this this sort of trope, or this I'm just forgetting the terminology for this. This sort of tendency, especially in the book of Breshit, for there to be these opportunities for people who were otherwise separated for many years to come back together again. And we watch very carefully to see what happens in that interaction. So after that very long preamble, the thing to point out is that there is a description of when Jacob and Esau finally, after everything, right, they see each other for the first time again. The text tells us basically that and actually it's probably good to get to the actual text itself, but that Esau basically and Jacob embrace, and that the Hebrew, if I remember correctly, is that Esau basically sort of falls upon his neck. In other words, it gives sort of a kiss of some sort. But in the actual Torah itself, it's one of the few places where there are strange markings, dots, that appear above the word for when he kissed Jacob. And so Rashi and some of the other commentaries, but mostly building off of Rashi's initial consideration of this, and he again indicates that usually when these three dots appear, that it really is an indication that there is something ulterior going on, that it's not as direct as it seems, and that in fact there's something disingenuous about it, to say the least. And the way that I recently heard somebody describe this, which actually makes the most sense, it's kind of the same way that, like, if we were going to put something in air quotes, that it's almost a sarcastic way of saying, what's really happening, right? He kissed him. It's not meant to be read as simply as we think it is. And so, of course, it's easy because the character of Esau is basically the sort of a boogeyman, right? He's considered to be a brute. He's considered to be sort of the antithesis of Jacob, and so it's very easy to look at this circumstance and say, how could he genuinely have kissed and embraced his brother after all these years, after his brother stole basically his inheritance, forced him out of their family land, all of these kinds of things. And the question ultimately becomes whether it's genuine or not. And so there opens up this whole conversation, this whole exploration of how do we determine when one's behavior is genuine and when it's not? And one can then ask a next question, which is that necessarily the only thing to consider, right? Let's just say for a moment that for whatever reason Esau was disingenuous about the act, that he hugged and kissed his brother, but it wasn't actually from the heart. It wasn't a deeply felt emotional response. It wasn't even forgiveness. Okay, it was something else that we don't know. Let's assume for a second that that's the case. Okay, that he does have some ulterior motive. What about the outcome? Okay, forget for a second what his motivation was, right? The outcome is that what could have ended in bloodshed, could have ended in destruction of certainly all of Jacob's camp, and the capturing of all the people and the cattle and all the things, and Jacob's life ending, and basically the line of Jewish people ending at that point. Okay, none of those things result. So whether or not Esau is, for example, a changed person, or suddenly becomes a warm-hearted person, whereas before he had been cold, we don't really know, and we don't really probably ever know. And the general consensus is that he didn't, and that he really actually remained something of a brutish man all the way through to the very end. But I think we do a disservice to the narrative and to the story and to the lesson when we focus too much on whether or not the man was 100% fully committed to the idea of reconciliation. I think a lot of times there is an assumption that for progress to happen, especially in the circumstance of creating peace or creating at least an attempt at repairing something that has been damaged, is the assumption that there has to be perfect and pure intention beforehand. That everything that matters is really about what happens beforehand. Some of it, and oftentimes, we actually take that first step of reconciliation with anger, right? With still a lot of anger in our hearts. Again, I can only speak for myself, but in circumstances where I've gone into maybe not moments quite as hyperbolic as these, but moments in which I was still upset with a person, or they were still upset with me. And yet we still did the act. We still went through the motion of demonstrating to each other that we saw, at least for a moment, the humanity, the purpose, the love, the heart, the experience. We saw for even the briefest moment a bit of the person's pain, right? It doesn't always have to be the case that we are of 100% certainty. It doesn't always have to be the case that we are always 100% going to forgive people who wrong us. I think that's disingenuous. I think that's a unfair expectation to place upon ourselves or to place upon others. And inevitably, right, we see ourselves in this story, probably more often than not as Jacob, but we ought to see ourselves probably as many times as Esau. Right? How do we respond in the moments in which we know that there are people who have consciously, purposefully wronged us, in which they have affected our lives to the negative, or at least presumably to the negative? Right? If we wait until we have reached somehow a perfect 100%, open-hearted moment, if we have to wait until it's all aligned in order to attempt the reconciliation, it generally is just not ever going to happen, right? There requires a certain amount of, I think, reasonable space for a human being to carry multiple emotions at the same time. And so Rashi, in a different place, and I actually somehow missed this all these years, he says that there are a few different ways to read this text. And that in fact, it can say that, Esau's actions were genuine, and it can say that they were disingenuous. And I think the third I would answer is basically to say that it can be both, right? That there could be genuine moments of it, and there could be less genuine moments. And what Rashi basically says is that the hug is genuine and the kiss is not. Right? And I think that's actually a remarkably deep kind of teaching when you think about it. Right? That first step, the hug feels good. You get in close, and then you remember the guy's a schmuck, and then you feel differently. And at that point, your feelings change a little bit. You walk back a little bit from the ideal, and all those feelings, all those histories, all that reminder of what the person did to you come back in. So it's something more of a give and a take. It's something more of a dance. It's not always necessarily one and then the next. And I think sometimes if, and again, I am a sort of peacenik-y kind of mindset person. I don't like conflict. I try to resolve it when I can. It eats me away when it's inside of me. But I also realize that there are times where if we just try to convince ourselves to get over something when we're not actually over it, or to forgive somebody when we actually haven't forgiven them, right? That's disingenuous. That actually is almost more damaging than anything else. And I think the truth is we have to be honest with ourselves in these moments. We have to see the honesty in this story. And you don't even have to go to Midrash. You don't even have to go to Rashi. I think actually if you read it in the Pshat, it's a remarkably nuanced tale in which you see all of these variations of emotions and feelings and preparations and actualities. And even at the end, a great amount of distrust, right? When they part ways and Esau says, hey, look, why don't you just come with me, right? I got all my guys here. We're going this way. Just come with me. We'll protect you and all that. What does Jacob say? No, thank you very much. I appreciate it, but, we're going to keep walking this way. Because there's still, again, at the end of the story is a lot of very complex emotion. But I think, the complexity is where the teaching is. The simplicity sometimes, I think, or I don't want to say the simplicity, but the easy answer for us, or the easy way to read these texts, the ones in which we can have a villain and a hero, or the one in which, one side is right and one side is wrong, I think really ultimately misses the point and does a disservice, not just to ourselves, but really actually to the story of our ancestors, which really is a remarkably layered and nuanced and complicated and even painful kind of narrative and story. So I hope that for all of us where we find ourselves in conflict, whether we're on the Jacob side or the Esau side, that we give ourselves also the space to say that,
it's important to seek reconciliation. It's important to seek forgiveness, to give forgiveness. It's important to find an end to conflict. All of these things are Jewish qualities and human qualities that we must pursue with greater effort. But I think in the end, we also have to be realistic about how that work gets done. And I think that sort of, on-demand, instant gratification mindset that we tend to have about most things, especially complicated things, in the end will fail us rather than serve us. Because if we operate in that kind of world and things don't turn out the way we envision, right? We give the hug and the kiss and we think everything is fine, and then next day, right, same stuff happens over again, and then we beat ourselves up and then we say we'll never forgive anybody again. Whereas if you go into the experience and say that this is like anything else, a process, and one in which there are going to be constantly moving lines, and ones in which we need to contemplate the balance both within and without. So with that, of any portion that we heard through my mumbling, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and may we learn from our ancestors, both their good and their bad. So with that, we're going to begin our Torah service. Again, just a reminder that when we start reading, we'll be on page 185 in the Women's Commentary, and page 219 in the Plat Chumash. And Howard, I don't want to steal your job, but you and me, we're on the same page. Ellen, would you want to do the Torah blessings this morning for us?
Sure.
Okay, so you relax for now, and you just do it from your seat. I'll give you this. We got a big plat. Yeah, Marshall will help you too. Okay, so we'll rise in body or spirit for Seder Kriyat Torah service, which begins page 362. Ein kamocha b'Elohim Adonai ve'ein k'masecha malchutcha malchut kol olamim u'mamshatecha b'chol tor v'hador Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai yimloch le'olam ba'ed Adonai oz le'moitem Adonai yevarech et amo b'shalom Avarachamim Heitiva Bertzoncha Et Zion Tivnei Chomot Yerushalayim Ki Becha Levad Batachnu Melech El Ram Benisa Adon Olamim Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Ki mitzion tetzei Torah, Uneva Adonai mi Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah, Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai
Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo. Shemo yachtav lecha Adonai hagedula hagevura v'hatiferet v'hanetzach v'hahom ki chol b'shamayim u'va'aretz lecha Adonai hamamlacha Yamid Naseh Lechol Erod Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Le'akodsho Romemu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ishtachavu Le'akodsho. Okay, please be seated. Ellen, do you want, maybe better that you read from the book than from the thing. I just don't want to give you anything I've touched. But so whenever you're ready, but we're going to call you up officially. Tamod, your Hebrew name? Hadassah bat Yaakov. Hadassah. Okay. Okay, Lalia Harishona. Okay,
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai המבורך לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Amen. Vaishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav el Esav achiv arza seir sedei Edom vayitzav otam lemor ko tomerun laadoni lesav ko amar avdecha Yaakov Im Laban garti ve'echar ad atam vayhi shor v'chamor tzon ve'eved v'sipecham ve'shlecha lagid ladonim limtsoa chen be'einecham וישובו המלאכים אל יעקב לאמור באנו אל אחיו אל עשיו וגם הולך לקראתך 400 איש עמו וירא יעקב מאוד ויצר לו ויחץ את העם אשר איתו ואת הצאן ואת הבקר והגמלים לשני מחנות ויאמר אם יבוא עשיו אל המחנה האחת והיכהו והיה המחנה הנשאר לפלטה ויאמר יעקב אלוהי אבי אברהם ואלוהי אבי יצחק אדוני האומר אלי שוב לארצך ולמולדתך והיטיבה עמך. קטונתי מכל החסדים ומכל האמת אשר עשית את עבדך כי במקלי עברתי את הירדן הזה ועתה הייתי לשני מחנות הצילני נא מיד אחי מיד עשיו כי ירא אנוכי אותו פן יבוא והיכני עם אלבנים ואתה אמרת היטב היטיב עמך ושמתי את זרעך ככל הים אשר לא יספר מרוב.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיינו למעשה בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Yashikoach, Ellen. That's great, man. Thanks for doing that. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Okay, before we lift and trust the Torah, we'll take a moment to offer our Mishaberach, our prayer for healing, which is on page 371 in our prayer book. Mishaberach Avotenu v'Imotenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah Hu Yivarech et hacholim ha'elu. We'll begin by thinking this morning of those in our community and those connected to our community in need of healing. Chava Malka Emet Shalom, B'nai Harav Daniel Natan, Ve'ahuva, Glenn Tinney, Tzipor Ahava, Gittel Bat Shmuel Ve'aviva, Oran Nachum, Bruce Steger, Chanarut Bat Sarah, Jeff Baker, David Tosher, Jim Cohn, Monique Renee Banks Rathbun, Lindsay Epstein, Dolores Michka, Sylvia Orn, Yerachmiel Ben Hinda, Paloma Chauhan, Samuel Moskowitz, Chaim Leib, Joyce Weinberg, Rick Gold, Stu Pollock, Jane London, Catherine Guarino, Emunah Chava, Judy Stern, Miriam Cornfield, Raz Brody, Chanarut Bat Sarah, Fagel Tzipora Bat Elisheva Bat Sarah, Richard Gambino, Michelle Sawicki, Idol Basha Bat Yitzchak, Tzvi Menachem Ben Chaim, Rivka Bat Devora, Amy and Gavin Tucker, Janice Kurz, David Dowling, Israel Ben Yitzchak, Ben Sion Ben Moshe, Lorraine Danis, Buddy Kasaf, Shelley Newmark, David Kyle Klotman, Rivka Bat Rachel, Sarah Bat Chana, Moshe Eliezer Ben Tzivia, Peretz Ben Yehuda, Leah Bat Naomi, Gedalia Ben Leah, Justin Banner, Tzipora Ahava Bat Yehudit Rachel, Jane Beard Cass, Amy Cass, Steve Levine, Ira Madras, Ephraim Raphael Ben Esther, and Myra Maslin. And I'll invite those in the room if you have additional names to add. Ellen, you have anybody you're thinking of this morning?
Can it be for somebody who needs healing of their spirit?
Absolutely.
Estella Camacho.
Ed Keenan, Joe Daly, Loretta Valsta, Linda Reiser, Mary Moore, Paul Coniscu, Alba and Don Stapleton, Jane Koss, Leah Gregory, or John.
Karen Layton. Karen Layton.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. This is my healing. Be with you guys. This is my healing. I appreciate the thought. Akadosh Baruch Hu Yimalei Rachamim Aleichem L'Chalimam L'Rapotam L'Chazikam V'Yishlach Lehem Meira Refuah Shlema Min HaShamayim Refuat HaNefesh Refuat HaGuf Hashtab Agalav Zman Kariv V'Namar Amen. May the one who blessed our ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah bless and heal those who are suffering. May the Blessed Holy One be filled with compassion for their health to be restored and their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send them a complete renewal of body and spirit, and let us say it together. Amen. El narefana la, el narefana la, el narefana la, refuah shelema. El narefana lo, el narefana lo, el narefana lo. Refuah shelema. Okay, we'll now rise in body or spirit, and then we're on the bottom of page 370 as we lift and dress the Torah. Yamod hamagbiya v'hagolel vezot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai b'yad Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Torah, 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 Tziva lanu Moshe. Okay, please be seated.
All right.
All right. Okay. After this, I'll sit back down again. It's nice to be back to the smaller Torah. I just, I didn't have time. I just kept forgetting to roll it all the way back. But just, very, very pleasant Torah. Okay, so our Haftarah this morning can be found on page 241. This is pulled from the prophet Hosea or Hosea. One of my favorites. Amos and Hosea tend to be my two most resonant. And, this really pulls from a different section of the Parsha, which we didn't talk about this morning, but tends to be the more iconic part of the Parsha, which is the wrestling that Jacob does with this sort of mysterious angel, man, whatever it is it may have been, himself, in which he emerges and ultimately is given a new name and is blessed. So in Hosea's days, as you'll see actually in 241, they give a nice description, again, a reminder of where the prophets are in time. So Hosea is in a period of time where the northern tribes still exist, but they are on the precipice of being destroyed and ultimately scattered. And so, he is doing his very best to convince this community that he is a part of to wrestle with its own identity and to understand and to come to grips with who they are and who they become and how to turn back ultimately and hopefully change their outcome. And as Hosea does, the narrative is largely poetic, but challenging to say the very least. So for those that are part of my prophets class, some of this should actually seem quite familiar. But before we begin our reading, which again will be on page 241, or maybe not again, maybe I didn't say it in the first place, page 241 in our plowed chumash. If you're following at home or in some other form, you're looking for the prophet Hosea, chapter 11, verse 7 to chapter 12, verse 12. And our blessings are back in our prayer book on page 372. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratza b'divrehem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'b'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek. My people are bent on turning from me. They invoke him, Baal, on the heights, but he cannot lift them up. How can I give you up, Ephraim? How can I let you go, O Israel? How can I make you like Admah or treat you like Zavoim? My heart has changed in me. All my pity stirs. I will not act upon my wrath. I will not turn to destroy Ephraim. For I am God and no mortal, the Holy One in your midst. I will not come with anger. They shall follow the Eternal, who will roar like a lion. When God roars, children shall flutter from the west. They shall come from Egypt, fluttering like a bird from the land of Assyria, trembling like a dove. And I will settle them in their homes, says the Eternal One. Ephraim surrounds me with lies, the house of Israel with deceit, while Judah still stands firm with God and keeps faith with the holy angels. Ephraim tends the wind, pursuing the east wind, ever multiplying falsehood and violence, and now making a covenant with Assyria and then sending oil to Egypt. The Eternal has arraigned Israel and will punish Jacob according to his ways, repaying him according to his deeds. And in the womb he seized his brother's heel. Grown up, he wrestled with a divine being. He wrestled with an angel and prevailed. He cried out and entreated him, who met him at Bethel, and there spoke with us. But in truth, it was the Eternal, the God of heaven's hosts, whose designation is the Eternal. Now then, you must truly turn back to your God. Hold fast to steadfast love and justice, and wait continually for your God. Like a trader who uses dishonest scales, who loves to oppress, Ephraim says, how rich I have become. I have found wealth for myself and in all my labors. They cannot find an offense. That is really a sin. But I, the Eternal, have been your God since the land of Egypt. I can make you live in tents again, as in the days of the tabernacle. I spoke to the prophets, I heaped up visions, and through the prophets I spoke in parables. In Gilead there is wickedness, they have become worthless. In Gilgal they sacrifice bulls, their altars too shall be like heaps of stone on the furrows of open fields. Which is interesting, because usually they try to end on something that's a little bit happier than that, but I guess this morning, not so much, but maybe I'm misreading the text. So we'll go back to our prayer books, to our Sidurim. We're now on page 372. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol haolamim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'mdaber u'mkayem, shekol ha'ra v'emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al ha'nvi'im, ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, שנתת לנו, אדוני אלוהינו, לקדושה ולמנוחה, לכבוד ולתפארת. על הכל, אדוני אלוהינו, אנחנו מודים לך, מברכים אותך, יתברך שמך בפי כל חי, תמיד לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. Amen. Okay, we'll turn now to page 376. Since I'm still sitting, I'm not going to ask you to rise unless you feel it, but if you want to rise, you're welcome. We're on page 376 at the very bottom, and I'll read the last paragraph of Prayer for Our Country. O guardian of life and liberty, may our nation always merit your protection. Teach us to give thanks for what we have by sharing it with those who are in need. Keep our eyes open to the wonders of creation, alert to the care of the earth. May we never be lazy in the work of peace. May we honor those who have died in defense of our ideals. Grant our leaders wisdom and forbearance. May they govern with justice and compassion. Help us all to appreciate one another and to respect the many ways that we may serve you. May our homes be safe from affliction and strife, and our country be sound in body and spirit. Together we say, Amen. A prayer for the state of Israel, page 377. Avinu shebashamayim tzur Yisrael v'goalo barech et medinat Yisrael reshit tzmichat geulatenu hagen aleha be'avrat chastecha ufros aleha sukat shlomecha ushlach orcha v'amidcha l'rasheha sareha v'yotzea v'tagnem be'etzah tova milfanecha v'natata shalom ba'aretz v'simchat olam liyoshveha v'nomar Amen. O Heavenly One, Protector and Redeemer of Israel, bless the state of Israel, which marks the dawning of hope for all who seek peace. Shield it beneath the wings of your love, spread over it the canopy of your peace. Send your light and truth to all who lead and advise, guiding them with your good counsel. Establish peace in the land and fullness of joy for all who dwell there. Amen. Okay, so at this point, I'll rise back up. We're on page 374 as we return the Torah. Well, I guess we're not really returning it anywhere, but ending the Torah service. Yehalelu et Shem Adonai, ki nizkav Shemo levado, Odo al heretz v'shamayim, v'yarem keren li'amo, Dila lecho chasidav, livnei Yisrael am kirovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Ki lekach tov natati lachem, torati al tazovu, etz chayi mehi, המחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר לרחם דרכנו עם וכל נתיבותיה שלום השיבנו אדוני אליך ונשובה Kadesh Yameinu, Kadesh Yameinu, Remain standing. We turn to page 586 at the very bottom. Aleinu l'shabeach. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, atet gidula l'yotzer breshit, shelo asanu kegoye ha'aratzot, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שמנה חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. Now I invite those in mourning, those observing yahrzeit, to please remain standing. Everyone else may be seated. We remember first those who have passed in our community in recent months: William J. Lippman, Audrey Lubo, Morty Lynn, Jerry Monroe, Harry Olstein, Geraldine Rosen, Harriet Roth, Jeannie Rubin, Harold Schreier, Dorothy Shupnick, Paul Silver, Marlise Silverberg, Blanche Sklar, Sylvia Alderman, Morris Dickstein, Linda Donath, Fred Eber, Sandra Furman, Evelyn Gelb, Arthur Grossman, Elaine Grossman, Gerald Hirsch, Deirdre Klein, Jeanette Kopp, Rita Sandra Snyder, Joan Strong Tangzilius, and Virginia Tizzle. And we also marked the yahrzeits that occurred during the last week for Jerome Alpern, Abraham Blasenheim, Florence Braz, Oscar Brill, Ariel Cherish, Wilfred Cohen, Nathaniel Dror, Pincus Grossman, Tessie Heller, Peggy Caton, Roland Graham Mason, Elias Riss, Hilda Ruby, Irving Saltzman, William Scavron, Bob Schneider, Teresa Spitz, Evelyn Steinberg, Harry Tiemann, Ann Weiss, Samuel White, Hannah Zuckman. Is anybody else saying Kaddish for anybody that we did not mention?
Vincent Galuccio and Millicent Castle.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we'll turn to page 598 as the mourners join me in saying the Kaddish. Yitgadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Ve'alma divrach irtei ve'amlich malachutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael. V'agalav v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam le'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitba'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shemei dekudsha b'richu. Leila min kol berchata v'shirata, tush berchata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'yimru Amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Oseh shalom b'rumav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru Amen. Zichronam livracha, may every one of their memories be for a blessing. Okay, let's all be seated. And before I forget to tell our son, Israel bound in the next couple of months. So my dad got there and everything worked well, but somebody misread the dates of his tests or his whatever it was, and I think his theory is that, like outside of America, the date and the month are reversed. So he thinks that's what happened. So just know when you guys go, make sure, don't let anything go by. But otherwise, it seemed to work very well. So when do you guys leave again?
January 4th.
Okay, good. So we still have oh, excellent. All right, good. Well, I'm jumping ahead. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It's great to see all of you. Torah study will begin on Zoom at 12 o'clock. A reminder that tomorrow, the virtual tour of the Jewish Marais, which I learned because of my lack of cultured knowledge, it means neighborhood, which I probably should have known. So the Jewish neighborhood with the Jewish Museum of Paris, which we actually got a huge response and are sold out. We sold out of something. That is wonderful. So I'm sorry if you got left out in the cold on that one, but maybe one day we'll all go visit the actual museum in Paris. That would be a little bit more fun. We could meet you, our world-traveling guys. We could meet you guys there. That would be great. Also a reminder that on Sunday, that is tomorrow, 3 p.m., the Interfaith Thanksgiving service will be held actually in person this year after a hiatus last year because of COVID. Will be hosted generously, as always, by Christ Church, by our friend Reverend Campbell, which is at 5 Hampton Street, just down the block, around the corner from here. Again, that's at 3 o'clock. It is in person for those who choose. No food is what used to be our thing. We'll get back there at some point. Masks required, very important. I am very much hoping to be there. If I were giving an honest answer right now, I'm not sure that I'm going to feel well enough, but we'll see. I had to give Shamus preeminence, and then we'll see if I can make it. But if not, our co-president, Ron Klausner, has been generous enough that he will stand in my stead and read our couple of Jewish blessings that are part of the community, unless the Reb's got nothing else going on tomorrow. Oh, isn't that convenient?
Out of town.
Out of town. But Ron, I'm sure, will do a good job, and hopefully I'll rally and I'll be there. But again, always a very important part of our year, and it really will take me not being able to stand to not be there. But in any case, I hope we will show up as we normally do in good force. So if you don't know how to get to Christ Church, you don't know anything about it, please let me know and I'll give you direction. But it's again 5 Hampton Street, right around the corner from here. Upcoming this week, Nina Mitzvah will meet at 11:30 on Monday, Hebrew School at 3:30, although that I'm still not 100% sure on because I think Shelley's out of town. But let's assume that's true. Social Justice Committee will have its meeting at 5 o'clock. On Monday as well. My Wednesday class is back in session at 12 o'clock. There is no Hebrew school on that day because of Thanksgiving, and of course wishing everybody, since I probably won't see you between now and then, a very happy Thanksgiving. I learned about a wonderful Italian food tradition I knew nothing about, which somehow combines pizza and pasta and various other things inside of something. That basically, like if you took a pizza dough and a casserole dish and you spread the dough over it, and then you filled inside of it with pasta and a bunch of other stuff. And then you covered it back over again and you bake it. And you basically have a pizza pie with pasta inside of it. It seemed brilliant. And I read this whole article that was saying that this should be everybody's side dish. That it's some... So I don't know. Apparently it became an Italian-American Thanksgiving norm. But it's a certain kind of dish in actual Italy and has been for some time. I don't know whether you guys ever came across it, but it seemed that there were variations depending on, of course, where you were in Italy and what you put inside of it. But it seemed sort of like an Italian equivalent of a turducken. It's just like one thing inside, and I'll just say increasingly for our vegetarian in the room, I find that a lot of the vegetarian stuff on Thanksgiving is the better stuff, but maybe I'm just not having good enough. Kosher turkeys sometimes maybe disappoint. Anyway, Marsha's our resident vegetarian. She keeps us honest. But I hope you all have a wonderful time. I know it's still a bit of a limited Thanksgiving, but it's better than last year for sure. Although here the weather's supposed to be bad. Okay, and just a reminder that as crazy as it is, Hanukkah begins Sunday, November 28th, before the end of the month. So thanks very much again to the Agosi family who've arranged this for year after year, and for Eileen who helped push with the village. But we're going to be able to, I think, close off the wharf so that we'll have plenty of space so that we can really take our time and have a good time out there, and hopefully the weather will be nice. And then for the rest of the, so anyway, that's 6 o'clock, Sunday, November 28th. We'll meet at the wharf here in town at Long Wharf. And then for the rest of the 7 nights of Hanukkah, we're arranging for something that we hope will become something of a new tradition for us. If you tune in at 6 o'clock every night, either on our website, Facebook page, or YouTube, you will see a virtual lighting of candles, myself and some of the members of our community, kibitzing a little bit, talking a little Hanukkah, lighting some candles. It'll be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So again, just, if you're looking for an additional piece for your Hanukkah enjoyment, you can join us virtually every night for the full week, all the way through. I don't think I have a way of streaming from the wharf on the first night, but maybe... Well, you know what? You never know with me. You never know. Might find a way. We'll see. You never know. Also, a reminder that for the second year in a row, thanks very much to our Social Justice Committee, who's helped to put together 8 different opportunities for each of the 8 nights to do something good in the world, to do something that is thinking of others beyond ourselves. So you can look up. It's in our website and our YouTube page. Our e-blast. All the information of different ways to get involved, and we hope that you will do that. And shortly, I'm sure next week, you'll get a December calendar, and we're off and running. So with that, I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom, and I appreciate all the well wishes for my health to get better, but mostly pray for the kids to get better sooner. That will make the father and the mother better much faster if they get better faster, for sure. But I hope that I don't give this to anybody else. That's the main thing. Anyway, enough rambling for this Shabbat. We're going to conclude our service. I think this is an Ein Kelohenu morning, if there ever was one. I know, Marsha's very excited. I've never met anybody that liked Ein Kelohenu more than Marsha, I think. Actually, no, I take that back. Me as a child, because it was a faster way to getting to the Kiddush. It was always faster than I don't know, for sure. So, Ein Kelohenu, page 626. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkeinu, Ein Kemoshienu, Michelohenu, Michadonenu, Michemalkeinu, Michemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Emalkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. All right, we're on page 604, Kiddush. I'm going to stay seated even though I know you're supposed to stand, but you guys can stand if you'd like. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי שגם עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת
לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. וביום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. על כן ברך אדוני יום השבת ויקדשהו סברי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הכפר.
L'chaim. Doesn't taste good?
No, Shemitz is fine, but right now it's the worst possible thing. I think actually what I wish I had was our old Schlivovitz bottles. That would probably do me a lot better. Speaking of which, Howard, what did we do with those bottles? Do you know?
I'm sure they got packed away.
You think so, though? I don't know. That last couple of days, things got a little hectic. I'm not sure. Howard, did we save the Schlivovitz bottles?
Huh?
Did we save the Schlivovitz bottles from the shul?
I think Neil took them, I hope.
Oh, that's bad news. Okay, good Shabbos, everybody.
He took all the wine.
He took all.